have an ancient background. This, too, is conjectural. The musical instruments of the Bible may be classified as follows: string, harp, lute, zither, wind, bagpipe, flute, horn, pipe, trumpet, possibly nihiloth, percussion, cymbals, sistrum, tambourine. See individual articles on the above instruments for further information. There is no reason to believe that the musical instruments of Israel were crude in design, construction, or sound production. The Bible notes that the harps and stringed instruments for temple use were of the choicest imported Algrim wood. The trumpets of silver. 1 Kai 10. 11, 12. New 10. 2. Undoubtedly, in the manufacture of the temple instruments, the most skilled craftsmen were employed. Both the scriptures and non-biblical manuscripts dating from before the Common Era testify to the quality of the instruments as well as the competence of the Israelite musicians. The Dead Sea Scrolls state that a number of trumpets were assigned various complicated signals to be executed as with one mouth. This would require not only skilled musicians, but also instruments so constructed that the pitch might be regulated in order to bring them all into tune with one another. Freedom from dissonance is indicated by the inspired account of the music at the inauguration of Solomon's temple. The 120 trumpeters and the singers were as one in causing one sound to be heard. 2 Ch 5. 12, 13. The Bible lists but 4 instruments as definitely being in the temple orchestra: trumpets, harps, stringed instruments heb, never middle limb, and cymbals. While this may not seem to be a complete orchestra by modern standards, it was never intended to be a symphony orchestra, but only to provide accompaniment for the singing at the temple. Such a combination of instruments would serve this purpose excellently. 2 Ch 29. 25, 26. Ne 12. 27, 41, 42. As to the times when the sacred instruments performed, the scriptures enumerate the following in connection with the trumpets: in the day of your rejoicing, and in your festal seasons, and at the commencements of your months, you must blow on the trumpets over your burnt offerings and your communion sacrifices. New 10. 10. After the temple music organization was established, it is likely that the rest of the instruments joined the trumpets on these and other special occasions. This conclusion, as well as the musical procedure followed, seems to be indicated by the order of events described as taking place when sacred services were revived by King Hezekiah after he had cleansed the temple. At the time that the burnt offering started, the song of Jehovah started and also the trumpets, even under the direction of the instruments of David the king of Israel. And all the congregation were bowing down while the song was resounding and the trumpets o textoi acute miritra longo. Music 453 duty common to other Levites in order to devote themselves wholly to their service. 1 Ch 9. 33. Their continuance as a special group of Levites is emphasized by their being listed separately among those returning from Babylon. As 2. 40, 41. Even the authority of the Persian king Artaxerxes Longimanus was brought to bear in their behalf, exempting them, along with other special groups, from tax, tribute, and toll. As 7. 24. Later, the king commanded that there was to be a fixed provision for the singers as each day required. Although Artaxerxes is credited with this order, most likely it was issued by Ezra on the basis of the power granted to him by Artaxerxes. Ne 11. 23. As 7. 18-26. Thus, it is understandable that, although the singers were all Levites, the Bible makes reference to them as a special body, speaking of the singers and Levites. Ne 7. 1. 13. 10. Apart from temple worship, other singers, men and women, are spoken of in Scripture. Examples of these are the male and female singers maintained by Solomon in his court. Also, about 200 singers of both sexes who, in addition to the Levite musicians, returned from Babylon. EC 2. 8. As 2. 65. Ne 7. 67. These non-Levite singers, common in Israel, were employed not only to enhance various festive occasions, but also to chant dirges in times of sorrow. 2 Sa 19. 35. 2 Ch 35. 25. 9. 17. 20. The custom of hiring professional musicians at times of joy and of sadness appears to have continued into the time when Jesus was on earth. Mount 11. 16. 17. Although not as prominent as in the Hebrew scriptures, music is not ignored or overlooked in the Christian Greek scriptures. Instrumental music in connection with true worship is mentioned only in a figurative sense in the Greek scriptures. Re 14. 2. Yet singing seems to have been quite common among God's servants. Jesus and his apostles sang praises after the Lord's evening meal. Mr. 14. 26. Luke tells of Paul and Silas singing when in prison, and Paul's encouragement to fellow believers was to sing songs of praise to Jehovah. Acts 16. 25. F5. 18, 19. Col 3. 16. Paul's statement at 1 Corinthians 14. 15 concerning singing appears to indicate that it was a regular feature of Christian worship. In recording his inspired vision, John tells of various heavenly creatures singing to God and Christ. Re 5. 8-10. 14. 3. 15. 2-4. Nature of biblical music. The Israelites' higher plane of morality and their superior literature, as exemplified by the poetry and prose of the Hebrew scriptures, suggest that the music of ancient Israel most likely transcended that of her contemporaries. Certainly the inspiration for the music of Israel was far loftier than that of neighboring nations. Of interest is in a Syrian bas-relief in which King Sennacherib is represented as demanding that King Hezekiah pay him as tribute both male and female musicians. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 288. It has long been held by some that Hebrew music was all melody, without harmony. However, the prominence alone of the harp and other stringed instruments in Israel weighs heavily against this assumption. It is almost inconceivable that a musician would play a multi-stringed instrument and fail to notice that a combination of certain tones was quite pleasing, or that a specific series of notes as in an arpeggio produced a pleasant sound. An informed source on the history of music, Kurt Sachs, states, "The deep-rooted prejudice that harmony and polyphony, two or more musical parts or voices combined, have been a prerogative of the medieval and modern West does not hold water." He goes on to say that even among primitive cultures there are many examples of music running in fifths, fourths, thirds as well as in octaves, and that among these peoples, including certain pygmy tribes, there was a development of overlapping antiphony alternate singing by two divisions. O texto e acute muritra longo, mustache 454, 24 courses of sanctuary musicians is being addressed, or it may have been another one of the accomplished musicians, since the record says that they were to act as directors. 1 ch 15. 21. 25. 1, 7-31. In some 20 other psalms the superscriptions are even more specific in their reference to the directors. To the director on stringed instruments, to the director on the lower octave, and so on. PS4, 12, and others. See Shemoneth. Additionally, there are scriptural references to the heads of the singers, to the experts, and to the learners. All of this testifies to a high standard of music. NE 12. 46. 1 ch 25. 7, 8. Much of the group singing in Israel appears to have been antiphonal, either two half choruses alternating in singing parallel lines, or a soloist and an answering chorus alternating. In the scriptures this apparently is referred to as responding. X 15. 21. 1 18. 6, 7. This type of singing is indicated by the very way some of the psalms are written, such as Psalm 136. The description of the two large thanksgiving choirs in Nehemiah's time and of their part in the inauguration of the Wall of Jerusalem implies that they sang in this style. NE 12. 31, 38, 40-42. See Song. Chanting might be said to be halfway between singing and speaking. In pitch it is rather monotonous and repetitious, with the emphasis being on rhythm. While chanting continues to be quite popular in some of the world's leading religions, its use in the Bible appears to be limited for dirges, as in the case of David chanting a dirge over the deaths of his friend Jonathan and of King Saul. 2 1. 17. 2ch 35. 25. Es 27. 32. 32. 16. Only in a dirge or lamentation would the chanting style be preferable to either the melody of music or the modulation and oral emphasis of pure speech. C. Dirge. Mustache. C. Beard. Mr. Gr. C. Middle.pi. A rapid growing herb, to the seed or grain of which Jesus referred in an illustration about the kingdom of the heavens. Mount 13. 31, 32. Mr. 4. 30-32. Lu 13. 18, 19. See illustrations and in pointing out that even a little faith can accomplish much. Mount 17. 20. Lu 17. 6. Several kinds of mustard plants are found growing wild in Palestine, black mustard brassica nigra being the variety commonly cultivated. In rich soil the seed, after a few months, may become tree-like, a plant measuring as much as 4.5 meters, 15 feet in height, with a central stalk having the thickness of a man's arm. The flowers of mustard plants are yellow and the leaves rather irregularly edged and dark green in color. The pods that develop contain a row of seeds, those of the black mustard being dark brown. In the fall the stems and branches of the plants harden and become rigid, strong enough to support birds such as linnets and finches that feed on the seeds. While some may argue that a mustard grain is not the tiniest of all seeds, orchid seeds being smaller, and that it does not actually become a tree, it must be borne in mind that Jesus was speaking in terms familiar to his audience. As far as Jesus' listeners were concerned, the mustard grain was indeed among the tiniest seeds planted, and it is noteworthy that the Arabs designate as trees plants smaller than the mustard. Mount 13. 31, 32. Muthlab and Muthlab ben. An expression included in the superscription of one of David's Psalms PS 9, traditionally said to mean concerning the death of the son. Some commentators suggest that it indicated to the musical director the name or perhaps the opening words of a familiar song that furnished the melody to be used in singing this psalm. One possibility of the word's meaning is advanced by the Targum, in which the superscription of Psalm 9 reads, "On the death of the man who came forth from between the camps," alluding to a champion. The apparent reference here is to Goliath, the Philistine champion whom David defeated in battle between the Israelite and Philistine. O text to acute muritra longo. Mystery 455 is threshing grain. 1t5. 17, 18 Also, as part of Paul's reasoning to show the Corinthians that the Lord ordained for those proclaiming the good news to live by means of the good news, he quoted Deuteronomy 25. 4 and then wrote, "Is it bulls God is caring for? Or is it altogether for our sakes he says it? Really for our sakes it was written, because the man who plows ought to plow in hope and the man who threshes ought to do so in hope of being a partaker." 1 Co 9. 8-14. The psalmist David used muzzle figuratively when he said that he set one as a guard to his mouth to keep from sinning. PS 39. 1. Myra, a major city in the province of Lycia. Situated near the coast of Asia Minor, Myra occupied a hill about 3 kilometers to mainland on the river Andricus. The site is now known as Tema. The ancient name Myra apparently embraced both the city and its excellent harbor. As a prisoner bound for Rome, the Apostle Paul arrived at Myra from Caesarea by way of Sidon. There he and his traveling companions had to transfer to grain ship from Alexandria that was sailing for Italy. Act 27. 1-6, 38 Myra was due of Alexandria and therefore may have been on the regular route of ships from that Egyptian city. Or, it may be that contrary winds. Act 27. 4-7 forced the Alexandrian vessel to change its course and drop anchor at Myra. At Acts 21. 1 Some ancient texts add in Myra after Patara. CJB, NE, RSFTNS. Although this addition would not be out of harmony with the rest of the account, there is insufficient evidence for determining whether the name Myra actually appeared in the original manuscript. Myrrh. An aromatic gum resin. K1. 13. 4. 6, 14. 5. 1, 13 Its precise source in ancient times is uncertain. but generally myrrh is the resin obtained from various thorny shrubs or small trees of the genus Comifera, such as Comifera myrrha or Comifera abyssinica. These shrubs thrive in rocky areas, particularly on limestone hills. Their wood and bark have a strong odor. Although the resin exudes by itself from the stem or from the thick and stiff branches of either variety, the flow can be increased by means of incisions. Initially the resin is soft and sticky, but, upon dripping to the ground, it hardens. Myrrh was one of the ingredients for the holy anointing oil. X30. 23-25. Esteemed for its fragrance, it was used to scent garments, beds, and other items. Compare PS45. 8. PR7. 17. K3. 6, 7. The Shulamite maiden of the Song of Solomon appears to have applied liquid myrrh to her body before retiring for the night. K5. 2, 5. Massages with oil of myrrh were included in the special beauty treatment given to Esther. As 2. 12. Myrrh was also one of the substances employed in preparing bodies for burial. Joe 19. 39, 40. It was apparently viewed as having sufficient value to be presented as a gift to one born king of the Jews. Mount 2. 1, 2, 11. Myrtle Heb. Headers. The myrtle myrtus communis grows as either a shrub or a tree and is common in Israel and Lebanon, growing well in stony soil. It is capable of reaching a height of 9 meters, 30 feet, but is usually found as a shrub 2 to 3 meters, 7 to 10 feet high. An evergreen, it is quite bushy in branch structure and has thick, shiny, dark green leaves. It blossoms with clusters of fragrant white flowers that mature into blue blackberries. Almost the entire plant has a fragrant spicy oil used in perfumes. The berries, though aromatic, are edible. The myrtle is found today particularly in Upper Galilee and the Valley of the Jordan, but it also grows in the Jerusalem area, as it evidently did at the time of Zechariah's vision recorded at Zechariah 1. 8-11, 16. Fragrant branches of myrtle were used along with the branches of other trees to cover the temporary outdoor huts or booths used by the Hebrews during the festival of booths. Eni 8. 14. 15. In the Restoration Prophecies, the myrtle tree with its otex toi acute muritra longo, 456 Naram pleasant. Son of Caleb, Jephunneh's son, of the tribe of Judah. 1 Ch 4. 1, 15. Naaminara middle dotmer pleasant. 1. Descendant of Cain. Sister of Tubal Cain and the daughter of Lamech by Zillah. Ge 4. 17-19. 22. 2. Aminat, wife of Solomon and mother of Hobom. 1 Chi 14. 21. 2 Ch 12. 13. 3. A Judean city in the Shephelah. Jos 15. 20, 33, 41. Its exact location is uncertain. Naamanara middle dot man from a root meaning be pleasant. 1. A grandson of Benjamin through his firstborn Bela. 1 Ch 8. 1-4, 7. Having founded a family, the Naamites in the tribe of Benjamin knew 26. 40. Naaman himself is elsewhere listed as one of the sons of Benjamin. Ge 46. 21. 2. A Syrian army chief of the 10th century BCE during the reigns of Jehoram of Israel and Ben-Hadad II of Syria. Naaman, a great, valiant, mighty man held in esteem, was the one by whom Jehovah had given salvation to Syria. 2 Chi 5. 1. The Bible gives no details as to how or why Naaman was used to bring this salvation to Syria. One possibility is that Naaman headed the Syrian forces that successfully resisted the efforts of Assyrian king Shalmaneser III to overrun Syria. Since, by remaining free, Syria formed a buffer state between Israel and Assyria, this may have served the purpose of slowing down Assyria's aggressive push in the W until Jehovah's due time to allow the northern kingdom to go into exile. Cured of leprosy. Naaman was a leper, and while the Syrians did not demand his isolation as Jehovah's law required of lepers in Israel, yet to learn how he might be cured of this loathsome disease was indeed welcome news. Such news came to him through his wife's Israelite slave girl who told of a prophet in Samaria who could cure leprosy. Immediately Naaman set out for Samaria with a letter of introduction from Ben-Hadad too. However, Israelite King Jehoram, after receiving him with coolness and suspicion, sent him to Elisha. Elisha did not meet Naaman personally but, instead, had his servant tell Naaman to bathe 7 times in the Jordan River. His pride hurt, and apparently feeling he had unceremoniously and fruitlessly been run from one place to another, Naaman turned away in a rage. Had his attendants not reasoned with him and pointed out the reasonableness of the instructions, Naaman would have returned to his country still a leper. As it turned out, he bathed the 7 times in the Jordan and was miraculously cleansed, the only leper whom Elisha was instrumental in curing. 2 Kai 5. 1-14. U4. 27. Becomes worshipper of Jehovah. Now filled with gratitude and humble appreciation, the Syrian army chief returned to Elisha, a distance of perhaps 50 kilometers 30 mi, and offered him a most generous gift, which the prophet insistently refused. Naaman then asked for some of the earth of Israel, the load of a pair of mules, to take home, that upon Israel's soil he might offer sacrifices to Jehovah, vowing that from then on he would worship no other god. Perhaps Naaman had in mind offering sacrifices to Jehovah upon an altar of ground. 2 Kai 5. 15-17. Compare X20. 24, 25. Naaman next requested that Jehovah forgive him when, in the performance of his civil duties, he bowed before the god Rimmon with the king, who evidently was old and infirm and leaned for support upon Naaman. If such was the case, then his bowing would be mechanical, being solely for the purpose of dutifully supporting the king's body and not in personal worship. Elisha believed Naaman's sincere request, replying, "Go in peace." 2 Kai 5. 18, 19. After leaving, Naaman was overtaken by Elisha's covetous servant Gehazi, who lyingly made it appear that Elisha had changed his mind and would, after all, accept some gifts. Naaman gladly granted him gifts of silver and garments. But for this greedy and lying act in which he tried, by misusing his office as Elisha's attendant, to profit from the work of Jehovah's Spirit, Jehovah punished him by otex toi acute miritra longo Nabonidus 457 nara middle ra. 1. Girl. Young woman. A wife of the Judean Asher by whom he had 4 sons. 1 ch 4. 1, 5, 6. 2. From the root meaning shake off. A city on the boundary of Ephraim Jos 16. 5, 7 thought to be the same as Nararan. 1 ch 7. 28 Nara is generally considered to correspond to the no middle dot o middle dot wrath of voice bis onomastic and 136, 24. Josephus seemingly calls this site Nara. He relates that half of its waters were diverted to irrigate the palms near Archelaus Palace at Jericho. Jewish Antiquities, 17, 340-13, 1 It has tentatively been identified with Tel El Jissa, about 3 kilometers to me and W of Jericho. Nara middle dot ri possibly a shortened form of Neariah, meaning boy young man of Jah, son of Ezbah and a mighty man in David's military forces. 1 ch 11. 26, 37 He may be identical with Pararai the Arbit mentioned at 2 Samuel 23. 35, in what seems to be a parallel list. Nara middle dot ran from a root meaning shake off. An Ephraimic border city 1 ch 7. 20, 28, apparently the same as Nara. Jos 16. 5, 7. See Nara no. 2. Nabal senseless. Stupid. A wealthy Maonite sheep owner who pastured and sheared his flocks in Carmel of Judah. Nabal was also known as a Calebite, that is, a descendant of Caleb. Few Bible characters are so contemptuously described as is Nabal. He was harsh and bad in his practices. He is too much of a good-for-nothing fellow son of Belial to speak to him. He repays evil in return for good. Senselessness is with him. 1 25. 2, 3, 17, 21, 25. David's men had protected Nabal's flocks of 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats from marauding bands. After showing this kindness and not being guilty of any misappropriation, David requested Nabal to provide some material assistance for him and his men at shearing time, a traditional time of feasting and hospitality. But Nabal screamed rebukes at David's messengers and sent them away empty-handed. Nabal's own men feared David's reaction, but did not feel free to speak to Nabal about the matter. One of them, however, told Nabal's wife Abigail. As David approached, intending to slay Nabal, Abigail met him with generous gifts of food and drink and persuaded him not to become guilty of shedding her husband's blood. On her return home, she found Nabal as drunk as could be, so waited until the next morning to tell him of her encounter with David and how near death he had caused them all to come. Thereupon, Nabal's heart came to be dead inside him, and he himself became as a stone, perhaps indicating some type of paralysis or else referring to the effect on Nabal's inner emotions. Compare to 28. 28. PS 102. 4. 143. 4. About 10 days later Nabal was struck dead by Jehovah. 1 Sir 25. 2-38 David then took the sensible and courageous Abigail as his wife. 1 Sir 25. 39-42. 27. 3. 30. 5. 2 Sir 2. 2. 3. 3. Nabonidus nab middle dot o middle dot enidas from Babylonian meaning Nebo, the Babylonian god is exalted. Last supreme monarch of the Babylonian Empire. Father of Belshazzar. On the basis of cuneiform texts he is believed to have ruled some 17 years 556-539 BCE. He was given to literature, art, and religion. In his own inscriptions Nabonidus claims to be of noble descent. A tablet found near ancient Haran gives evidence that Nabonidus' mother or grandmother was a devotee of the moon god Sin. Ancient Near Eastern texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 311, 312 as king, Nabonidus showed great devotion to the worship of the moon god, both at Haran and at Ur, where this god occupied a dominant position. Picture, Volume 2, p. 324. Cuneiform tablets of the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar and 617 and 616 BCE list a certain Nabonidus as the one who is over the city, and some historians believe this is the same Nabonidus who later became king. However, this would mean that Nabonidus was a very young man when placed in such administrative position and would make him extremely otextoi acute miritra longo. Nabonidus 458 biblical fact that Nebuchadnezzar is referred to as the father of Nabonidus' son Belshazzar. 5. 11, 18, 22, the term father at times having the meaning of grandfather or ancestor. This view would make Belshazzar a grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. See, however, Belshazzar. Nabonidus' ascension to the throne followed the assassination of Labashimarduk. Yet, the fact that in one of his inscriptions Nabonidus refers to himself as the mighty delegate of Nebuchadnezzar and Neriglissar indicates that he claimed that he gained the throne by legitimate means and was not a usurper. In a number of prisms Nabonidus associates his firstborn son, Belshazzar, with himself in his prayers to the moon god. Documents from Old Testament times, edited by D. W. Thomas, 1962, p. 73. An inscription shows that in his third year, prior to going out on a campaign that resulted in the conquest of Temur in Arabia, Nabonidus appointed Belshazzar to kingship in Babylon. The same text indicates that Nabonidus offended the people of his empire by concentrating worship on the moon god and by failing to be in Babylon to celebrate the New Year's festival. The document known as the Nabonidus Chronicle states that in the 7th, 9th, 10th, and 11th years of his reign Nabonidus was in the city of Temur, and in each case the statement is made. The king did not come to Babylon for the ceremonies of the month of Nisanu. The image of the god Nebo did not come to Babylon. The image of the god Bel did not go out of Esagila in procession. The festival of the New Year was omitted. Ancient Near Eastern texts, p. 306. Due to the mutilated condition of the text, the record of the other years is incomplete. Of the oasis city of Temur it is elsewhere recorded. He made the town beautiful, built there his palace like the palace in Su and Middle Nar Babylon. Ancient Near Eastern texts, p. 313 Nabonidus appears to have established his royal residence in Tema, and other texts show that camel caravans carried provisions there from Babylonia. While not relinquishing his position as king of the empire, Nabonidus entrusted the administration of the government of Babylon to Belshazzar. Since Tema was a junction city on the ancient caravan routes along which gold and spices were transported through Arabia, Nabonidus' interest in it may have been motivated by economic reasons or may have been based on factors of military strategy. The suggestion is also advanced that he considered it politically advisable to administer Babylonian affairs through his son. Other factors, such as the healthful climate of Tema and the prominence of moon worship in Arabia, have likewise been noted as possible motives for Nabonidus' apparent preference for Tema. There is no available information as to Nabonidus' activities between his 12th year and his final year. Anticipating aggression from the Medes and Persians under Cyrus the Great, Nabonidus had entered into an alliance with the Lydian Empire and Egypt. The Nabonidus Chronicle shows Nabonidus back in Babylon in the year of the Medo-Persian assault, with the New Year's festival being celebrated and the various gods of Babylonia being brought into the city. Regarding Cyrus' advance, the Chronicle states that, following a victory at Apis, he captured Sippar 60 kilometers 37 men of Babylon and Nabonidus fled. Then follows the account of the Medo-Persian conquest of Babylon, and it is stated that upon Nabonidus' return there he was taken prisoner. Ancient Near Eastern texts, p. 306. The writings of Berosus, Babylonian priest of the 3rd century BCE, relate that Nabonidus had gone out to engage Cyrus' forces in battle but was defeated. They further tell that Nabonidus took refuge in Borsippa of Babylon and that, after Babylon fell, Nabonidus surrendered to Cyrus and was thereafter deported to Commania in southern Persia. This account would coincide with the biblical record O Textoi Acute Miritra Longo. Nabonidus 459 primarily depicts the main events of the reign of Nabonidus, the last supreme monarch of Babylon, including a terse account of the fall of Babylon to the troops of Cyrus. Though it was no doubt originally from Babylon and written in Babylonian cuneiform script, scholars who have examined its script style say it may date from some time in the Seleucid period 312-65 BCE, hence 2 centuries or more after Nabonidus' day. It is considered almost certainly to be a copy of an earlier document. The tone of this chronicle so strongly glorifies Cyrus, while presenting Nabonidus in a disparaging way that it is thought to have been the work of a Persian scribe, and in fact, it has been referred to as Persian propaganda. However, while such may be the case, historians feel that a circumstantial date it contains is nonetheless reliable. In spite of the brevity of the Nabonidus chronicle, the tablet measures about 14 centimeters 5.5 inches in breadth at the widest point and about the same in length. It remains the most complete cuneiform record of the fall of Babylon available. In the third of its 4 columns, beginning with line 5, pertinent sections read: 17th year. In the month of Tashretu, when Cyrus attacked the army of Akkad and Abis on the Tigris, the inhabitants of Akkad revolted, but he Nabonidus massacred the confused inhabitants. The 14th day, Sippar was seized without battle. Nabonidus fled. The 16th day, Gebri-Sugbru, the governor of Gutium, and the army of Cyrus entered Babylon without battle. Afterwards Nabonidus was arrested in Babylon when he returned there. In the month of Arishamnu, the 3rd day, Cyrus entered Babylon. Green twigs were spread in front of him. The state of peace, Sawm, was imposed upon the city. Ancient Near Eastern texts, p. 306. It may be noted that the phrase 17th year does not appear on the tablet, that portion of the text being damaged. This phrase is inserted by the translators, because they believed that Nabonidus' 17th regnal year was his last. So they assumed that the fall of Babylon came in that year of his reign and that, if the tablet were not damaged, those words would appear in the space now damaged. Even if Nabonidus' reign was of greater length than is generally supposed, this would not change the accepted date of 539 BCE as the year of Babylon's fall, for there are other sources pointing to that year. This factor, however, does lessen to some extent the value of the Nabonidus chronicle. While the year is missing, the month and day of the city's fall, nevertheless, are on the remaining text. Using these, secular chronologers calculate the 16th day of Tishri as falling on October the 11th, Julian calendar, and October the 5th, Gregorian calendar, in the year 539 BCE. Since this date is an accepted one, there being no evidence to the contrary, it is usable as a pivotal date in coordinating secular history with Bible history. See chronology. Interestingly, the Chronicle says concerning the night of Babylon's fall, the army of Cyrus entered Babylon without battle. This likely means without a general conflict, and agrees with the prophecy of Jeremiah that the mighty men of Babylon would cease to fight. Jah 51:30. Also of interest are the evident references to Belshazzar in the Chronicle. Although Belshazzar is not specifically named, in the light of later portions of the Chronicle Col. 2, lines 5, 10, 19, 23, column 1, line 8, is construed by Sidney Smith, in his Babylonian historical texts, relating to the capture and downfall of Babylon, London, 1924, p. 100, as showing that Nabonidus entrusted kingship to Belshazzar, making him co-regent. Repeatedly the Chronicle states that the crown prince was in Akkad, Babylonia, while Nabonidus himself was at Temur in Arabia. However, the fact that Belshazzar is not mentioned by name, nor is his death referred to in the Nabonidus Chronicle o Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Naboth 460 narrated in chapter 5. Quite to the contrary, cuneiform experts admit that the Nabonidus Chronicle is extremely brief, and in addition, as shown above, they are of the opinion that it was written to defame Nabonidus, not to give a detailed history. Indeed, as R.P. Dufferty says in his work Nabonidus and Belshazzar p. 200. The scriptural account may be interpreted as excelling because it employs the name Belshazzar. Italics hours. Although column 4 of the Chronicle is badly broken, scholars have concluded from what remains that the subject was a later siege of Babylon, which has been taken over by some usurper. The first such siege of Babylon that followed Cyrus is thought to have been during the uprising of Nebuchadnezzar III, or Nidin-Tubal, who claimed to be a son of Nabonidus. He was defeated in the accession year of Durasilate in 522 BCE. Naboth, a Jezreelite vineyard owner and victim of a wicked plot by Queen Jezebel. Naboth's vineyard in Jezreel was within sight of King Ahab's palace. Naboth declined Ahab's offer to buy the vineyard or to exchange it for a better vineyard somewhere else, because Jehovah had prohibited sale in perpetuity of a family inheritance. 1 Kai 21. 1-4. La 25. 23-28 Ahab's wife Queen Jezebel, however, schemed to have two witnesses falsely accuse Naboth of blaspheming God and the king. Thereby Naboth and his sons were put to death. 2 Kai 9. 26, enabling Ahab to take possession of the vineyard. Because of this murder, Elijah foretold that the dogs not only would eat up Jezebel, but would also lick up Ahab's blood in the same place they licked up Naboth's blood. Ahab's offspring would similarly be cut off. 1 Kai 21. 5-23 This divine pronouncement was carried out. 1 Kai 22. 34, 38. 2 Kai 9. 21, 24-26, 35, 36. 10. 1-11. Nikon possibly, firmly established. According to 2 Samuel 6. 6. The name of the threshing floor where Uzzah died for grabbing hold of the Ark of the Covenant. The parallel account at 1 Chronicles 13. 9 says Chidon, probably indicating that one writer mentioned the name of the place, the other that of its owner, or that one name is an altered form of the other. Nadab willing. Noble. Generous. 1. The firstborn son of Aaron and Elisheba. X 6. 23. 1 Ch 6. 3 Nadab was born in Egypt and made the great exodus with Israel. He with his next younger brother Abihu and 70 other Israelites were called with Aaron and Moses up into Sinai, where they saw a vision of Jehovah. X 24. 1, 9-11 Nadab and his 3 brothers were all installed into the priesthood with their father. X 28. 1. 40. 12-16 Evidently before the day was over, Nadab and Abihu abused their office by offering illegitimate fire. Just what made the fire illegitimate is not stated, but it was probably more than just getting intoxicated suggested by the immediate prohibition to priests not to drink wine or intoxicating liquor when on duty. However, intoxication may have contributed to their wrongdoing. For their transgression, they were killed by fire from Jehovah, and their bodies were disposed of outside the camp. La 10. 1-11. New 26. 60, 61. Nadab and Abihu died before they had fathered any sons, leaving their brothers Eleazar and Ithamar to found the 2 priestly houses. New 3. 2, 4. 1 ch 24. 1, 2. 2. A descendant of Judah in the line of Jerahmeel, son of Shemaiah and father to Seld and Lapam. 1 ch 2. 3, 25, 26, 28, 30. 3. A son of Jael of the tribe of Benjamin. 1 ch 8. 1, 29, 30. 9. 35, 36. 4. Son of Jeroboam and second king of the northern 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. Nadab ruled for parts of 2 years, starting in about 976 BCE, during which he continued the calf worship instituted by his father. While besieging Gibbethon, a former Levite city, Jos 21. 23 taken over by the Philistines, Nadab was assassinated by Baasha, who then killed off all remaining members of Jeroboam's house in order to secure the throne for Otextoi Acute Miritra Longo. Nabi 461 Nahalol Naha Middle. Lol watering place. Pasture. Alternate name for Nahalol, a city in Zebulun. JG 1. 30. Naham comfort. Brother-in-law of Hodiah, a descendant of Judah. 1 ch 4. 1, 19. Nahamani na middle. From a root meaning comfort. One who returned with Zerubbabel from the Babylonian exile. Ne 7. 6, 7. Naharai naha middle. Rai. A Beeritite and one of Joab's armor bearers. Naharai was among the mighty men of David's military forces. 2 23. 24, 37. 1 ch 11. 26, 39. Nahash serpent. 1. King of the Ammonites at the time Saul began his reign. Nahash brought his army against Jabesh in Gilead. The account reads: At that all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, Conclude a covenant with us that we may serve you. Then Nahash the Ammonite said to them, On this condition I shall conclude it with you, on the condition of boring out every right eye of yours, and I must put it as a reproach upon all Israel. In turn the older men of Jabesh said to him, Give us 7 days' time, and we will send messengers into all the territory of Israel, and, if there is no savior of us, we must then go out to you. Israel rallied around Saul, went to Jabesh, and defeated Nahash. Only a few of Nahash's army escaped alive. 1 11. 1-11. 12. 11, 12. In a Dead Sea Scroll, designated for Xama and believed to be from the 1st century BCE, the following information is inserted just before 1 Samuel 11. 1. Nahash, king of the children of Ammon, sorely oppressed the children of Gad and the children of Reuben, and he gouged out their right eyes, and struck terror and dread in Israel. There was not left one among the children of Israel beyond the Jordan whose right eye was not put out by Nahash, king of the children of Ammon. Except that 7,000 men fled from the children of Ammon and entered Jabesh Gilead. About a month later. Bible Review, 1985, Volume 1, No. 3, p. 28. Basically the same information is given by Josephus. Jewish Antiquities, 6, 68-70 v. 1. According to Josephus' Jewish Antiquities, 6, 79 v. 3, this Nahash was killed in the battle by Saul's forces. If Josephus' information is correct, then the Nahash that extended kindness to David some years later must have been a son and successor to the Nahash defeated by Saul. In such a case, the name Nahash may have been a title bestowed on a series of persons, like the titles Abimelech, Pharaoh, and Jabin. When this second-named Nahash died, David sent ambassadors to his son, Nun, who misunderstood David's honorable intentions and greatly humiliated his representatives. This, in turn, triggered a series of developments that eventually left the Ammonites defeated at the hands of David. 2 Sa 10. 1-5. 11. 1. 12. 26-31. 1 Ch 19. 1-5. 20. 1-3. 2. The father of David's sister or half-sister Abigail, and possibly the father of Zeruiah. He was the grandfather of Amasa, and perhaps also of Abishai, Asahel, and Joab. 2 Sa 17. 25. 1 Ch 2. 16, 17 Abigail is called the daughter of Nahash, but she and her sister are not directly called the daughters of Jesse, David's father, though they are referred to as the sisters of Jesse's sons, including David. This leaves several possible relationships. 1. That Nahash was a woman, Jesse's wife and the mother of all involved. The name could be given to either sex, but this is not very likely because women were usually introduced into a genealogy only for special reasons, which here seem to be missing. 2. That Nahash was another name for Jesse, as is suggested by early Jewish tradition. The Greek Septuagint Lagardine edition has Jesse instead of Nahash in 2 Samuel 17. 25. 3. That Nahash was a former husband of Jesse's wife, a more likely suggestion, and that she bore Nahash 2 daughters, Abigail and Zeruiah, before marrying Jesse and bearing him several boys. See Abigail no. 2. 3. A resident of the Ammonite city of Rabbah. Hizo textoi acute miritra longo, Nahor 462 Nahor. 1. Father of Terah and grandfather of Abraham. Nahor was a son of Serug and descendant of Shem. He lived 148 years 2177 to 2029 BCE. GE 11. 22-26. 1 Ch 1. 24-27. Lu 3. 34-36. 2. Son of Terah. Grandson of Nahor number 1. And brother of Abraham. GE 11. 26. Jos 24. 2. Nahor married Milcah, Lot's sister and the daughter of Nahor's other brother, Haran, hence Nahor's niece. By her he had 8 sons, and by his concubine Rumah he had 4 more sons, totaling 12, some of whom became tribal heads. GE 11. 27, 29. 22. 20-24 Through his son Bethuel, Nahor became grandfather to Laban and Rebekah, and great-grandfather of Leah, Rachel, Jacob, Israel, and Esau. GE 24. 15, 24, 47. 29. 5, 16. 1 Ch 1. 34. The Genesis account of Terah and Abraham leaving Ur of the Chaldeans does not include Nahor's name in the list of travelers. GE 11. 31 It does seem, however, that he may have come later, for Abraham's servant, seeking a wife for Isaac, traveled to Haran, where Terah took up dwelling and where he died, and where Nahor's grandson Laban lived when Jacob went to him. GE 11. 31, 32. 12. 4. 27. 43 Abraham's servant came to the city of Nahor, either to Haran itself or a place close by, perhaps the Nahor frequently mentioned in various Mari tablets of the 2nd millennium BCE GE 24. 10. 29. 4. The Biblical Archaeologist, 1948, p. 16 And when Jacob parted company from Laban, Laban called on the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor to judge between them. GE 31. 53. See Haran no. 4. Nashon from a root meaning serpent. Wilderness chieftain of the tribe of Judah. Nashon was the son of Amminadab and among the 5th listed generation after Judah. 1 Ch 2. 3-10 His sister was Aaron's wife. X6. 23 Nashon formed a link in the line of descent that led to David and Jesus, becoming father to Salmon, who married Rahab, and grandfather of Boaz, who, in turn, married Ruth. 1 Ch 2. 11-15. Ru 4. 20. Mount 1. 4-6, 16. Luke 3. 32. As chieftain of Judah, the leading tribe of Israel, Nushan assisted Moses with the first wilderness registration of fighting man. He presented a contribution to the tabernacle service when the altar was inaugurated, and he headed Judah's army of 74,600 that led Israel's line of march. New 1. 2-7. 2. 3, 4. 7. 2, 11-17. 10. 14. Nahum comforter, that is, an encourager. 1. An Israelite prophet of the 7th century BCE and the writer of the book bearing his name. Nahum may have been in Judah at the time he recorded his prophecy. Nah 1. 15. His being an Elkoshite evidently means that he was a resident of Elkosh, possibly a city or village of Judah. Nah 1. 1. See Elkoshite. 2. Apostexilic ancestor of Jesus Christ in the line of his earthly mother Mary. Luke 3. 25. Nahum, Book of. This book is a prophetic pronouncement against Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. This Bible book was written by Nahum the Elkoshite. Nah 1. 1. The historical fulfillment of that prophetic pronouncement testifies to the authenticity of the book. Sometime after the Egyptian city of No-Amenhotep suffered humiliating defeat in the 7th century BCE 3. 8-10, the Book of Nahum was committed to writing, being completed before Nineveh's foretold destruction came in 632 BCE. See Assyria. Nineveh. Harmony with other Bible books. The Book of Nahum agrees fully with the rest of the scriptures in describing Jehovah as a God exacting exclusive devotion, slow to anger and great in power, but by no means withholding punishment. Nah 1. 2, 3. Compare X 20. 5. 34. 6, 7. Job 9. 4. PS 62. A pronouncement against Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, written sometime before Nineveh was destroyed in 632 BCE. Jehovah executes vengeance upon his adversaries. 1. 1-6. Jehovah requires exclusive devotion. Though he is slow to anger, he does not hold back punishment when deserved. No one can stand against the heat of his anger. O textoi acute miritra longo. Name 463, 11. Jehovah is good, a stronghold in the day of distress. And he is cognizant of those seeking refuge in him. Nah 1. 7. Compare PS 25. 8. 46. 1. Issa 25. 4. Mount 19. 17. These qualities are clearly manifest in his delivering the Israelites from Assyrian oppression and executing vengeance against blood-guilty Nineveh after a considerable period of forbearance. Noteworthy, too, are the similarities between Nahum chapter 1 and Psalm 97. The words of Isaiah 10. 24-27. 30. 27-33 regarding Jehovah's judgment against Assyria parallel, to an extent, Nahum chapters 2 and 3. Also compare Issa 52. 7. Nah 1. 15. Row 10. 15. Historical background. Although assured that a conspiracy of Syrian king Rezin and Israelite king Pekah would fail in the attempt to depose him as king, Issa 7. 3-7. Faithless Ahaz of Judah unwisely appealed to Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III Tilgath-Pilneser for aid. Eventually this move caused him distress, and did not strengthen him, for Judah came under the heavy yoke of Assyria. 2ch 28. 21 later, Ahaz's son and successor to the throne, Hezekiah, rebelled against Assyrian dominance. 2ch 18. 7 Thereafter the Assyrian monarch Sennacherib invaded Judah and seized one fortified city after another, this resulting in extensive desolation of the land. Compare Issa 7. 20, 23-25. 8. 6-8. 36. 1, 2. The next Judean king, Manasseh, was captured by Assyrian army chiefs and taken to Babylon, then under Assyrian control. 2ch 33. 11. Since Judah had thus suffered long under the heavy hand of Assyria, Nahum's prophecy regarding Nineveh's imminent destruction was good news. As if Assyria had already experienced its downfall, Nahum wrote, "Look upon the mountains, the feet of one bringing good news, one publishing peace. O Judah, celebrate your festivals. Pay your vows. Because no more will any good-for-nothing person pass again through you. In his entirety he will certainly be cut off." Nah 1:15. No longer would there be any interference from the Assyrians. Nothing would hinder the Judeans from attending or celebrating the festivals. The deliverance from the Assyrian oppressor would be complete. Compare Nah 1:9. Also, all other peoples hearing about Nineveh's destruction would clap their hands, or rejoice, over her calamity, for the city's badness had brought much suffering to them. 3:19. The military aggressiveness of the Assyrians made Nineveh a city of bloodshed. Nah 3:1. Cruel and inhuman was the treatment meted out to captives of her wars. Some were burned or skinned alive. Others were blinded or had their noses, ears, or fingers cut off. Frequently, captives were led by cords attached to hooks that pierced the nose or lips. Truly Nineveh deserved to be destroyed for her blood guiltiness. Nail. Ancient nails were quite similar to the larger modern ones, although some kinds had four-sided shanks and a longer taper to the point than those in use today. Apparently, earliest nails were made of bronze, though larger nails of later times were made of iron. David prepared iron in great quantity for nails for the doors of the gates of the prospective temple. 1 Ch 22. 3 ornamental nails have been discovered that were made of bronze overlaid with gold foil, and these are said to date back to about 1300 to 1200 BCE. Concerning nails used in the construction of Solomon's temple, it is said, the weight for the nails was 50 gold shekels, 0.6 kilograms. 1.5 pounds t. 2 Ch 3. 8, 9. In 1968, in an excavated tomb located just east of Jerusalem, the remains were found of a Jew who was executed in the 1st century by being attached to a torture stake. As shown by subsequent studies, an iron nail 11.5 centimeters 4.5 inches long was still piercing the right heel bone. This nail may be similar to the nails employed by the Roman soldiers to impale Jesus Christ. Thomas did not believe that Christ was resurrected until after he saw the print of the nails in Jesus' flesh. Joe 20. O texto e acute miritra longo, Nioth 464. In 31 CE, during his first preaching tour of Galilee, Christ Jesus came to Nain from the vicinity of Capernaum. Lu 7. 1-11. A distance of about 35 kilometers 22 mi separated the two locations. The gate may simply have been an opening between the houses by which a road entered Nain, there being no evidence that a wall ever surrounded the city. It was probably at the eastern entrance of Nain that Jesus and his disciples met the funeral procession, which was perhaps headed for the hillside tombs lying to the east of modern Nain. Moved with pity for the now childless widow, Jesus approached the bier and resurrected the widow's son. News of this miracle spread throughout the region and even reached Judea. The event may also be alluded to by the words "the dead are being raised up," forming part of Jesus' reply to the messengers later sent by the imprisoned John the Baptizer. Lu 7. 11-22. Naoth. Seemingly a place where certain prophets resided in the time of Samuel. 1 19. 18. 20. 1. It may refer to a certain locality or quarter of the town of Ramah, in the hill country of Ephraim. See Ramah no. 5. Textual critic S.R. Driver corroborates this view, observing, probably it is the name of some locality in Ramah, the signification of which is lost to us. Notes on the Hebrew text and the topography of the books of Samuel, Oxford, 1966, p. 159. Name. A word or phrase that constitutes a distinctive designation of a person, place, animal, plant, or other object. Name can mean a person's reputation or the person himself. Every family in heaven and on earth owes its name to Jehovah God. F3. 14, 15. He established the first human family and permitted Adam and Eve to have children. Therefore, the earthly lines of descent owe their name to him. He is also the father of his heavenly family. And just as he calls all the countless stars by their names, PS 147. 4. He undoubtedly gave names to the angels. JG 13. 18. An interesting example of how something completely new was named involves the miraculously provided manna. When the Israelites first saw it, they exclaimed,